If going outside, seeing sunrise, and being outdoors in general is so healthy for you, then how do you navigate that during the winter? What is true hydration and what the heck is easy water? Stay tuned for this week's episode to find out all of that and more. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Today, I have an interview with Carrie Bennett of Carrie B Wellness. Now, she is a clinical nutritionist as well as an expert in circadian biology and quantum physics. She's one brilliant lady, and I love her because she's also the mother of three and can really take a lot of these circadian biology principles and quantum physics principles and bring them into daily practical life. So a lot of you guys that live in northern climates, live possibly in the UK and Canada, you have been asking me in multiple comment threads and in messages, what do I do during the winter to preserve my health? How can I still tap into nature and continue to be healthy? So Carrie and I go into all of this and more. We also talk about easy water. She is one of the world's leading experts on water and hydration. And like I said, I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. Make sure you pull down that information section. There are tons of different topics that are organized into chapters so you can navigate through, skip around, and also check out the resources section. I'm going to put in some resources like where I get my favorite blue blockers and my favorite red light device and some of the other things that we mentioned in here. I also have all of Carrie's information in that information section as well, because you're definitely going to want to go over to her YouTube channel, to her podcast, to her website to follow her so you can keep learning from her like I am now. I also want to thank the sponsors of today's episode. The first one is Upgraded Formulas. Now, if you do not have enough magnesium in your cell, you cannot create ATP. And ATP is a huge topic. Mitochondria is a huge topic in this podcast. So my favorite source for magnesium is going to be Upgraded Formulas. They have a technology that is called nanoparticle technology, where that magnesium is so small, those nanoparticles, that it can actually enter the cell and be stabilized. So in other words, your body is going to be able to utilize this magnesium much easier than a lot of the other magnesiums out on the market. I have found this to be true for myself. My code over at Upgraded Formulas is Yogi12. They also have an awesome hair tissue mineral analysis so that you can actually know, are you deficient in magnesium? And I think that's a great tool for people to check in on their minerals. So thank you, Upgraded Formulas. I also want to thank the second sponsor of today's episode, which is going to be Optimal Carnivore. Now you can save 10% on your order at Optimal Carnivore by putting in the code CARNIVORY, capital Y. And this is an excellent way to get that nutrition of organ meats. Carrie and I also talk about how organ meats can help sustain you in the winter to get your body to do what you need it to do to stay healthy, keep your immune system healthy. And this is just a really wonderful way to get those nutrients into your body, bioavailable nutrients. This organ supplement blend is what I have been taking and giving my daughter as well every day. She is not a huge fan of eating organ meats like a lot of us, and I absolutely love this product. So again, you can use my code CARNIVORY to save 10% on the Optimal Carnivore products, and the link will be in the information section for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Please feel free to leave me a comment. Make sure to like this video and please share it out to anyone that you feel could be helped by it. All right, let's jump into the episode. All right, guys, I am so excited about today's guest. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have been down quite a rabbit hole this year, as a lot of you guys know, really trying to learn about circadian biology, quantum physics, and I have Carrie here with me today, who's an expert on water. And I also want to talk with her about magnetism as well. And we'll probably touch on light also because
Sure.
she is a mom and she lives up north. And so a lot of, what we've talked about is like what we were saying, gold standard, right? So I just love her perspective. She's got a great podcast and I will link all of that below so you guys can go follow her. But Carrie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. I'm super excited to chat.
Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind for my followers, just telling them a little bit about you, your journey, and what you do.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll say my journey started back in college, right? When I thought I was at the pinnacle of health. And I was a college athlete, college volleyball player. And, I should have been just feeling like flipping awesome all the time. And I was riddled with injuries, connective tissue injuries, especially so. Torn shoulders, subluxation, which is like partial dislocation of joints. I was in pain all the time. Had insomnia. Like it was a disaster, right? It was a disaster. And so that kind of, in college, I studied biology, mostly molecular and cell biology. And, I had this thought of, well, I can go get my PhD in these things, or, med school was an option as well. And kind of like in a selfish way, maybe it wasn't selfish, but I wanted to heal myself. So like, I think of like a lot of us, we search for ways to make ourselves feel better in order, just to kind of explore. And so that's what I did. I was like, okay, mom and dad, thanks for the college degree. Thanks for helping me through. I love it. And now I want to be a massage therapist. And they were very calm and supportive. And they said, okay, great. Now get a job and put yourself through massage therapy school. And it's like, okay, that's completely legit. So I became a personal trainer, having had that college athlete background. I became a personal trainer. So I really got into exercise, and exercise became like the ultimate, like everyone has to exercise and it's got to look like this, and then I went through massage therapy school and was like, well, yeah, but everyone has to exercise, but you also have to get a massage, right? You have to take care of your tissues in this way. And then fast forward to when I had my first child, and he was not a sleeper, right? He did not sleep ever. And I ended up with, what I guess a lot of people refer to as adrenal fatigue, and also horrible, horrible digestive issues. So that started me then down the journey to get a master's degree in applied clinical nutrition so that I thought nutrition would fix me. And I did everything perfectly with nutrition, and it made a difference, but it wasn't the complete picture. And so then, about 5 years after that, I found Dr. Jack Kruse, who I know you've talked with, and started just diving into quantum biology, literally reading all of his articles, all the books that were recommended, everything I could get. My desk is littered with quantum biology books, everything I could get my hands on. And so I have found that really using light and water and magnetism and viewing the body very differently than I was taught through biochemistry has made all the difference in my own healing journey. I feel, 40, I feel way better, more energy, more youthful, no pain, great sleep, so much better now than I ever did when I was in my 20s. So it's been a journey, and I know it was all meant to be, and it's led me here.
I love it. And, I'm the same, the food was so helpful, but just discovering my relationship with light and how dysfunctional it was and what it was doing to my body, I had no idea. And so I'm just really passionate about sharing this with my listeners and my audience. And so I'd love to hear how you work with clients now, because I know you do work with clients, right?
Yes, I do work with clients, definitely. So I used to tackle nutrition first. So as a nutritionist, you would think I would tackle nutrition first. And I don't touch what people eat until further down the line in their healing journey. I start 100% with their light environment, circadian rhythm, and then also their connection with nature. And the development of what I think we're going to touch on a little bit is this concept of exclusion zone water inside of their bodies. And so that's the foundation. And then we just build upon that.
Yeah. And you're an expert on this easy water, which I think a lot of people have heard about it, but they don't really understand what it means, how it works, why they should care about it. So I know that's like, it's a not really like a soundbite type of a thing, but if you could just simplify it for anyone who's like, well, what is that? Why should I care about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I will. So this, I guess, has become more and more popular. It's a concept of how the water inside of our bodies is different. So when typically we think of water, we think, okay, water, it's a liquid, like it's in a glass, right? Like this liquid water right here, or it's a vapor, or it's ice, right? And that's the only way that water can exist. And then so we think, okay, we hear the human body is 70% water. So we got to drink a ton of water to hydrate our tissues. And that water then goes into our cells. And when I was in school, when I was in college and I was studying molecular biology, cell biology, the image we were given of the cell is is a bag full of water with just a bunch of proteins floating in it. And things would kind of randomly bump into each other and collide, and they would interact. And then, then they would go away from that reaction and collide and interact. And frankly, it made no sense back then to me that that's how nature selected things to work in us. And fast forward to now, the water inside of us, especially the water inside of our cells, takes on a completely different phase. It's a fourth phase of water that's like a gel. So the water inside of us is structured into a gel. And when it structures itself into a gel, it actually is able to not only hold some negative electrons, which are a source of energy, but it also then can structure itself in a way that we literally can trap information from light in our environment, from the magnetism from the earth, from even just electrons that flow through our body when we're grounding ourselves. All of those things can interact with that water inside of us and provide us with a complete source of energy. So that's why I shifted away from food a lot, because I found that food does provide energy, but that's like maybe a third of the equation. And so when we tackle all of these other sources of energy for people, it's amazing how much better they feel. And then we can touch food, because food is people are so sensitive about about food. So it's really nice to be able to say, okay, let's focus on the fact that your body makes energy and uses energy and literally captures energy from your environment in a completely different way. And let's maximize that for you.
So what would that look like for someone that wanted to maximize that energy?
Well, so that water, that exclusion zone water, that fourth phase of water, it forms next to all biological surfaces. So anything that's a protein, a membrane, a connective tissue, like any molecule like that, you're going to have this shell of exclusion zone water. And it structures itself in what's called a liquid crystalline format. So it sounds kind of weird, right? But a liquid crystal is well known in physics. This is not a woo-woo thing, right? It's really well known in physics. A liquid crystal is simply a liquid substance that takes on order, just like a crystal. So if we were to look at the molecules of a crystal under a microscope, they would be very ordered in a beautiful design. Water in a glass typically just kind of sloshes around, the molecules kind of move this way and that. But water in this fourth phase is structured and ordered. So it looks almost like a honeycomb of these water molecules. And so what we now know is that we can expand that honeycomb size by adding infrared. And the coolest thing about, so infrared, that's heat, but that's sunlight too. So that's where light comes in. So I'll talk a little bit about my strategies once people kind of understand how you can get energy from this. It's like, so you got all these proteins in your cell. They're held in this pretty structured configuration by this gel water. This gel water has a negative charge to it. And the reason it has a negative charge is because it kicks out protons. Protons are just a positive charge, a hydrogen. It kicks out a hydrogen. I know you talked a lot about deuterium. So it kicks out actually a deuterium depleted hydrogen, right? Like it's a light hydrogen, regular hydrogen that it kicks out. And when you have a positive charge next to a negative charge, that's a battery. And so literally the research out of Dr. Jerry Pollack's lab, who has really kind of made this a thing that's become popularized. Research out of Dr. Pollack's lab has shown that you can literally stick a microelectrode in the positive zone called the proton zone and in the negative zone called the exclusion zone, and you can light a light bulb with it. So you can have electricity and energy and you can power things. And so when I kind of put all this together, I recognized that we're being told a half truth when it comes to the only way to get energy in our bodies is from food.
Yes. And, people have been so skeptical of my journey because I've lost 25 pounds since May of this year, and I really didn't change my food so much. I changed my light, and they're like, oh, well, you definitely calorie restricted. And I'm like, I probably did, but it wasn't painful.
Right.
It was just like, I'm outside, it's summer, I'm getting sunlight, I'm doing sunrise every day, I'm doing sunset every night, I'm getting sun on my skin during the day, I'm outside barefoot as much as I can be. And yeah, I probably did eat less, but I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't ravenously hungry, it didn't feel painful, I didn't feel restricted. And so people are like, what diet did you go on? And how much protein did you eat? And how much fat did you eat? And what are the ratios and the macros and this and that? I'm like, I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know. I just went outside. Okay. Like, why
Right.
is that? And so I love how you've really just broken this down and explained it, because people are like, this is just too good to be true.
Mm-hmm.
But when you explain it in those terms, I mean, it makes perfect sense that food, yes, is an energy source, but it's not it's not our only energy source. It's not the only way that we subside. And I feel like, and I'm sure you can attest to this, and you probably feel the same way, that a lot of people, most people these days, have a major light deficiency and major sunlight deficiency.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's a nature deficiency syndrome, right? We're not
Yeah.
outside. I think the statistic is Americans average 93% of their time indoors,
Mm-hmm.
which is, that's not a lot, right? So, and when we're inside, we're disconnected, literally this water that's inside of us, in conjunction with the collagen. The collagen it's not just a beauty thing, right? It can be a beauty thing, but
I listened to your podcast on collagen, which was like freaking awesome, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love the collagen, because the collagen is really where we hold a ton of this water, right?
Mm.
And that collagen needs to be healthy too. But the coolest part about it is that we literally have the ability to withdraw energy when we're grounded outside. Those electrons from the earth is a negative surface, right? The earth has it's a negative charge. We literally suck those electrons in through our bare feet into our connective tissue, into our collagen. So those electrons become energy for us. The sunlight becomes energy for us. And the coolest part about the sunlight, and this is where I think the appetite suppressing effect comes from, is picture being at the beach all day.
Oh yeah.
And what happens, right? Like, I don't feel hungry at the beach all day.
Never.
Right. And
Yeah.
so what we now know is that infrared, when we get the heat, the sun, the infrared light on our skin, that infrared wavelength can literally penetrate through our entire bodies. So it's not just skin deep, right? It literally goes through all of our tissues. And out of what we know from the research out of Dr. Pollack's lab is that specific frequency of sunlight can expand the exclusion zone fourfold. So you're charging your battery. You're charging the negative area. You're charging up the proton area, the positive area. You're making a bigger battery. So you have energy. You can literally take energy from the sun, which means that you're evolutionarily, we weren't like, oh, well, you got all this energy stored in this water format, but I want you to go out and hunt and gather still, right? It wouldn't make sense to have to do that. So all of a sudden our brain says, okay, she's completely charged full. Like, we got enough energy. And this form of energy, shockingly, when I was reading a lot of the research on this, and just have been experiencing it myself, this energy, when we charge this exclusion zone, that can stay energized for up to weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, so that's why, like you get outside regularly, like every little hits like that, you can do make a big difference in your body. It's not about having to live 24/7 outside. These little hits will add up and they'll stay charged. So then I also give people the example, because they're like, oh yeah, well, at the beach, yeah, it's just because we're outside all day. But I tell people, what about after exercise?
Right.
What's your hunger like after exercise? I'm not starving after exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we exercise, we generate our own infrared. We generate our own heat, right? And so we basically help our body structure that water again. So we charge our battery up when we exercise. I frankly feel like there are so many things that we know have benefits that can be explained from a quantum perspective, as opposed to like the biochemistry perspective that is done in the lab. And so exercise is one of them. I think exercise is literally a way that we recharge that water battery again, so that we don't have to go out and hunt and gather and do all those things to get our food. We don't have to waste energy.
And what kind of exercise do you think is probably the ideal for this type of recharge?
Well, I think gold standard specifically for the recharge is something that will make your body generate heat. So whether that's a combination, I think exercise should almost exclusively be done outside. when at all possible,
Agree.
right?
Yeah.
It makes all the difference in the world. And if you can add barefoot to that, that makes all the difference in the world. So if you can find an activity that takes you about 10 to 20 minutes and you are outside and you are barefoot and grounded and you're generating heat from that, it doesn't matter if it's yoga, Pilates, lunges, a Metcon, kettlebell swings, like you name it. I don't think the modality matters as much as the environment and what you're looking for in terms of generating the heat, being grounded, being in sunlight.
I love it. Yeah, I'm going to go barefoot and swing my kettlebell after this.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. I mean, but think about it, right? Like so many ancient cultures and civilizations had a practice of doing some sort of movement at sunrise, grounded.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been a yoga teacher for 12 years and the basis is Surya Namaskar, the sun salutations. And, that's what we did every morning. I did Ashtanga yoga and we had to be at the shala every single morning at 5 a.m. to start practicing as the sun was coming up. And that's yoga tradition. And so, yeah, and that's ancient. It goes back so many years. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think that we're finally recognizing, that we don't have to rely on diet because frankly, diet's a big industry. Diet sells a lot of money. Food sells a lot of money. This stuff, it's free to us. And so it's hard to place a really firm value on how important it is because it's not the next, supplement or craze or whatever it is. It's not the next exercise program that I'm going to subscribe to. It's free, but once my clients start to do this all the time, I mean, I feel like this is 100% success rate. They won't give up morning movement outside. Nope. Like that's a non-negotiable in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it sets their circadian rhythm. It charges up that water battery and it just allows them to have energy from a source that's not what they're going to eat next.
Yeah. I mean, every morning my husband thinks I'm a little nuts because I'll wake up and put my blue blockers on
yes.
And then I'm outside barefoot in the front yard because our yard faces east. And if I can't go on a walk, I love going on a walk, but sometimes my daughter is like just too extra. And so she comes outside with me and we'll just in the front yard walking around together. And that's how we start our day now. And that's new. But I'm just addicted to it. Like it has this super addictive quality just because you just start to feel so energized. You feel like I'm 42 and I feel better than I did in my 20s. Yes. I mean, I honestly do.
Absolutely. I definitely call it better than a cup of coffee.
It is.
And it's like people look at me cross-eyed when I do that. When I say that, because they're like, there's no way that's better than a cup of coffee. There's absolutely no way. But like, honestly, try it for a week. Don't have any coffee, save it for after the sunrise. That's fine. But go outside and literally, as soon as my eyes go up to the sky at sunrise, it's like oh yeah, my brain's awake. All right, let's do this. Let's get started. So if I hadn't experienced it myself and didn't have so many clients who said the same thing, I would have thought it was crazy too. But I really encourage anybody to try that. The joke, and I work with people all over the world, but the joke in Kalamazoo where I live is like, oh, someone's outside at sunrise, kind of just randomly staring up at the sky. It's like, oh, that must be one of Carrie's clients, doing that weird stuff, that she tells everyone to do. But it's like, hey, like the more of us that do it and we make people realize that it's normal and it's healthy and it's beneficial, then more people maybe will pick up on it and also give it a try.
Yeah. And that's honestly the goal of kind of my platform moving forward really is I just want this, I want to make this trendy, carnivore diet's trendy, the keto diet's trendy. It's a fad. People want to try it. Go ahead, go for it. But if you're not doing this along with it, it's only going to do so much for you and you're going to burn out. You're going to get exhausted with it and you're going to say it's not sustainable. And a lot of people are going to quit and they're going to give up.
Yes.
This is free.
This is free. I've had 2 experiences doing the keto diet because in general, keto works for me pretty well, right? Mm-hmm. My first experience was when I was trying to heal my gut, heal my low energy when my son was born and he was not a good sleeper. But as soon as he would go to sleep, I knew I had 40 minutes to and so what did I do? I cleaned up the house. I stared at my phone screen. It's like, why is my child not sleeping? Why is my child not sleeping?
Yes.
And it's like keto there it had zero effect for me. It had zero effect. And it's because my lighting environment was so wrong. I was, as a new mom, it was like, I don't know, it's hot. It's August. Do I take my kid outside? Like, should he be outside right now? He's going to overheat. And I mean, with baby number 3, it's like he was in a diaper from day 1 outside, no matter the temperature. But that's, I mean, my light environment was so off when I tried that food. And then fast forward to now, when I do, I go into, when I want to get like my nerd brain firing on all cylinders and digest one of these crazy books, I totally go into deep ketosis because there is something so powerful about that. But it's because my light environment is right. And now the keto works for me. So that's where you have to get your light environment right. If you want to feel the effect of any nutrition plan that you try, you're not going to see it unless that light environment is right. And the other cool thing about the light environment being right is if you want to consume more garbage at some point, like I like sweets, I like dessert. You do it outside, because when we're outside in the middle of the afternoon, that nitric oxide stimulates our little GLUT4 receptors that help us pull blood sugar out, right, to help regulate our blood sugar. So if I'm going to eat sugary stuff, I'm going to do it outside in the middle of the afternoon because the sunlight is working for me to help regulate my blood sugar. So, I mean, it's just, there's strategies where we can use the light to help us with so many different types of things.
Yeah. And, Corey and I talked about that a little bit on our live stream of just, if you are going to eat something like a watermelon, that the best time that you could do it would be in the middle of the summer on the beach, and probably the worst time would be 8:00 at night watching TV, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, frankly, my advice to people when it comes to food is when you eat is more important than what you eat to start off with. And it's like, eat when the light is out. And if you can eat outside, another switch that we made as a family this summer, it's going to be interesting to try to hack that in Michigan in the winter, but we've eaten a lot of meals outside. We spend so much more time with like an outside picnic table eating in our backyard than we ever did before. And I think it makes a huge difference for all of us, from digestion to also just knowing that those light frequencies are providing my body with even more information than the food is.
Yeah. And I feel like so many people, myself, I used to always sit indoors, have my phone next to me while I'm eating, scrolling my phone, reading, scrolling, eating. And that could be probably one of the worst things that you're doing for yourself, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that you're getting the complete wrong signal into your eyes when you have that screen, but also going back to that exclusion zone water, Wi-Fi and cell phone radiation, it dehydrates us. It shrinks that exclusion zone 15 to 20%.
Wow.
And so like, we don't want to shrink that. That's a completely alternative, sustainable form of energy in our bodies. And so anytime we do things that shrink it down, it's going to be damaging to our energy, and it's going to be damaging to a lot of other pathways too. So you're exactly right. I tell people, if you are going to use that technology, be outside under the natural light. So at least the infrared is charging you up as you're also potentially pulling it away with those electromagnetic fields, those non-native electromagnetic fields.
Yeah. And putting your phone on airplane mode as much as possible, right?
Mm-hmm. As much as possible. Everything, like I hardwire things here, which was super helpful. But I love that as soon as I, just got around to it, right? I feel like we always have a list of so many things to accomplish. Yes. But once I recognized the priority of hardwiring, I also got that adapter for my phone was the best thing I could have done, because you can take your Ethernet cord, plug it into your phone. Your phone's on Wi-Fi or is on airplane mode all the time, and you can still do everything that you want to do. So it's just little tiny things like that can really start to add up. That's why my podcast is the 2% Better Health Podcast. Because these little 2%, all of a sudden you start to list them and you're like, oh yeah, this is really adding up to like some major improvements in my life.
Yeah, I agree. And let's talk a little bit about why somebody might want to invest in hardwiring their house, like what that would look like, what it could possibly do for their health if they do that. Because I know that I have a lot of pushback here at my house. We're in process and my husband is like pushing back on me huge. So maybe you could say something that would selfishly for my situation.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like whenever that exclusion zone water we know that it literally traps electromagnetic fields. And that's how the body recognizes what environment it's in. So if we're outside, it'll trap the sunlight. If we're inside in Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi is an electromagnetic field. We're going to trap that Wi-Fi. And that's information for my body then to decide what it needs to do to adapt on a second by second basis. When I trap those non-native signals that have only been around for 50 years, 100 years most, when we're looking at radio waves, it's very confusing to the body. It causes a frequency in my body to be trapped that I haven't evolved with. None of us have evolved with. And so that creates chaos in the body. It depletes the exclusion zone. It really is just in the same way as you stare at blue light at night and it creates dysfunctional circadian rhythm. This creates dysfunctional communication happening inside the cells. It creates a more chaotic state. And so if we can remove that chaos from our immediate environment, we're going to be way better off. And then when we do go outside and we trap the correct fields of energy into that exclusion zone water, then we're just going to set ourselves up for that much more success. So Ethernet cords at first, they were all over the house. It drove my husband crazy. Eventually you drill holes and you weave it where it needs to go. Wi-Fi is, we do use Wi-Fi in the evenings because Leon, my husband, likes to cast sporting events onto our TV.
Yeah.
Right?
That's my husband. Hardwired. Yeah, we don't have cable. We got rid of cable a long time ago. And so he has the Roku, and sports are a non-negotiable around here. Yeah,
I know. That's the same thing. I frankly, I love watching it as well. And so that's the one give, right? This is where in an ideal world, would everything be hardwired all the time? 100%. But am I doing a heck of a lot by making everything hardwired and also unplugging my Wi-Fi router at night to allow for maybe 2 hours or 3 hours of sports being cast to the TV.
Yeah.
The rest of it, that matters, right? So I always tell my clients, don't make perfect be the enemy of good, right?
Yeah.
Good is good. Good is good. Don't belittle yourself because you're only doing it this much. It's that much is better than what you were doing before.
Exactly. So. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm at. Every night I'm coming in here, unplugging everything. And I'm the one who works from home most of the time. And so I'm usually outside working as much because I live in Georgia. So we've got great weather here. Yeah. But if I'm inside, I'm unplugging the Wi-Fi, and my husband will come home and he'd try to work on his laptop. I'm like, oh shoot, sorry.
Yeah.
So we haven't gone full on with the hardwiring yet, but I'm unplugging it as much as possible. And it's, my daughter, I think I talked about this with Corey a little bit. She's severely autistic, but she spells to communicate, and she is very, very sensitive to everything. She loves going to my mom's house. And we talked about this after I took my first conversation with Corey. I wanted to know from her if the electronics or the Wi-Fi or anything, if it bothered her, and she said, I like grandma's house because the walls are quiet there. Our house, the walls, they kind of scream just a bit unless you unplug the Wi-Fi. And I was like, oh, shoot. And she's like, and I like it when your phone's on airplane mode because it doesn't make my head hurt.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was skeptical until she she was like, I feel a lot better because she says the walls are screaming. That's how she describes it when the Wi-Fi is on. And I'm like, okay, well.
Well, it's not, well, we don't want you to feel like the walls are screaming.
We don't really want that.
No, but that's the coolest part about people who can, that's in my opinion, that's a gift, right? That she can hear that and she can sense that, because what better validation to be like, okay, that's not an ideal situation. I really want to remedy that. I had a similar thing happen with a client who all of a sudden outside of their gorgeous home pops up a 5G, little 5G cell, right?
Yeah.
And she, it was her husband that I was working with at the time. And he was, a believer in this idea that the 5G isn't ideal, right? But what am I going to do? And the wife's an audiologist, and she was not having anything. She's like, there's no way that this is anything. All of a sudden, as soon as that thing popped up, ringing in the ears all the time.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so it's just so, I mean, it just goes to show you that like, I think some people need to sense it like that, or get an experience, like a visceral experience, or hear someone else's visceral experience to know that even though we can't see it, it is playing with our biology all the time.
All the time. Yeah. And the thing about my daughter that I've always, she'll be 14 in December, but ever since she could walk, the child would run in my yard barefoot, no matter what the temperature. It could be 18 degrees and she's in the backyard running around barefoot. And I used to try to stop it. And now I'm like, no, fine. And we do it together. Like, I'll come out there with you. But the child she just wants to be barefoot outdoors all the time. And it's like, now that I'm learning what I'm learning, I'm like, God, she's so intuitive, you know? And we're in the car, she's hanging her whole body out the window and it looks completely insane, but I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't care. That's fine.
No,
Go
it's
ahead.
great. So kids know, they instinctively know what feels good and they do what feels good. So like the cool part about what I think is doing is she's creating her own Faraday cage.
Yeah, she does.
Right. And so it's like being grounded and having Earth's electrons run through you and having the sunlight entering your exclusion zone. You're blocking out all that garbage from entering you. So she's naturally kind of surrounding herself with her own little protective bubble by being outside. And then the cold's another thing, right? Those mitochondria.
She loves it.
Yeah, I know. Like, right. We have this cold plunge tub and my kids will always want to be in there.
Really?
We're the weirdos of the neighborhood. We're the weirdos of the neighborhood for a lot of reasons, like they're glowing red lights in my house.
And yes, we're getting there.
Thank you. Join the club. But besides that, it's because like literally the first day of spring in Michigan, or not even the first, like, as soon as it starts to feel warm in Michigan after a cold winter, it's maybe 40 degrees outside. 45. My kids are outside with the sprinkler, like, the hose running through, and like everyone's just like, oh my gosh, your kids are going to get hypothermia. Or it's like, the kids are smart. Like they're not, when they get cold, they pull themselves out of the situation, like, And so I really have come to appreciate and trust children and animals, who I believe are so much more in tune with really what they need to be healthy than I am.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like we've all thought that we're smarter than them all the time. And now, I've had this huge shift with my daughter, especially since she does all this spelling and she spells all kinds of things that just blow me away. I'm like, okay, well, I need to learn from you. Like, this is, you chose me. I know this 100% that you chose me because I need to be learning from you. I have for 13 years, but it just continues because I mean, she knows all of this stuff already that we're doing. It's like, okay, there's
I know, just that innate intelligence. It's amazing.
So I mean, God, it's like, where do we go? There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but just the winter thing, that is something that I get asked about quite a bit because I've really started quite a stir in my community with going outside and getting your vitamin D up and, being in nature. And a lot of people that listen to the show, they live up north and people live in the UK and it's rainy and it's cold. And so what the heck do they do in the winter months to maintain their health?
I think it's hackable, right? I do think it's hackable. I think that it's consistency is what's needed. I think that's really important. So step one is, no matter where you're living, no matter what latitude you're at, you always do have to see the sunrise. In the middle of summer, when I'm not trying to, get, kids ready for school and pack lunches. And in the middle of summer, we're outside, right, at sunrise, and we're barefoot on the dewy grass and, playing and all that. It's great. In the middle of winter, I have a screened patio door, right? And so it's like, I stick my head out like this, kind of, and like look up at the sky for a little while, for 3 minutes. And that's my seeing the sunrise. Or, I'm driving the car in to school and it's drop off time and my sunroof is open, my windows are down, and that's how I'm getting the natural light. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be consistent. And so as long as you're seeing the sunrise, that's step one. That sets your circadian rhythm. That lines so much of your physiology up so that it can happen in the appropriate order. Step two then is, winter is a time for more rest because it's darker, right? So it's darkness, it's cold, and it's scarce. At least it should be, right? But we've been able to create a non-winter situation in
Yeah.
our northern latitudes. And so it's not that winter is the problem. It's how we modify winter that is, I think, completely negatively affecting our physiology, our health. So what I like to think of for winter is it's dark at 5 o'clock here. And so if I have lights on, it's my red LEDs from,
Yep.
Midwest Red Light Therapy. It's my little incandescent Edison style bulb. So it's dim in the house. It's dim and it should be. But I can't go to the extent where I never turn on a light because I've got kids who come home and need homework. You need to do their homework and stuff. So it's like, you do the best you can, but you make your house substantially dimmer than it would be maybe in the middle of the summer at that same time. So I dim my house. I put those blue blockers on as soon as the sun sets. I have two, right, that I play around with in the winter time. I'd use the orange tone, like yellowy orange tone ones first when I want to protect my circadian rhythm, but I don't want to fall asleep like that.
Yeah.
And then, within about 2 hours of bedtime, I put on the red ones.
The reds.
And those ones, it's amazing. Like that, as soon as you're not getting that artificial light into your eyes, melatonin just goes through the roof, right? Like it's like, I cannot stay awake. And for people who have a hard time falling asleep, I've been playing around with supplementing with glycine as part of my collagen support, which is a whole nother topic we can talk about at some point. But also glycine is a very calming amino acid. So if people just even need a little extra support to get to sleep at an appropriate time, I tell them honor an earlier bedtime in the winter. And then even if you sleep 7 hours and it's 8 hours, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, lay there, right?
Yeah.
Lay there and rest. I'll meditate, pray, whatever it is. I think I heard in one of your podcasts that you picked up Vedic meditation. I did too recently, right? Yeah. So it's that's a great time of the morning to do something like that. And again, but it's something that's calming. And so I don't say that like, okay, you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay. So go get your workout in right now. Like be extra productive because you woke up early. That's not what winter is about. Right. So honor your rest, honor your recovery. The other thing too, in the northern latitude is you got to make your environment colder. You got to become cold adapted. So this is a great time to start playing around with, okay, I'm going to set my thermostat lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And I'm going to maybe take some cold showers or do some cold plunges or go outside. One of the easiest ways to transition in my opinion, in the northern latitudes is to take advantage of this time of year. I'm pointing outside because it's cold and rainy right now. But it's like 65 and it's chilly. And so go outside and get used to the 65-degree weather in as little clothing as you can. A walk is a great way to do that. And again, it just allows your body to experience the cold, to get cold. You boost up a whole bunch of feel-good chemicals like dopamine, like norepinephrine. So things that start to make you feel good with the cold. And then you start to crave the cold. So you got to create that just like you do. And I do with sunrise. We get that kind of that hit of like, I don't know, it just feels so good. It's addicting. Cold is going to be addictive too, to people who start to layer that on. And that's a must in these northern latitudes. So get cold, keep it dark. And then this is where scarcity, this is the time of year where I love to do intermittent fasting more and extended fasting. If I recommend only eating within the daylight time, well, I mean, sunrise is at 8:15, sunset, right?
5.
Right, exactly. So you've already shrunk your window. And then even then you can shrink your window. You can do a couple of 48 hours or 3-day fast. I mean, this would be the time when food would be scarce and your body wants to run all of those programs that help you repair, because in darkness, melatonin is higher and melatonin is needed to run that autophagy, the apoptosis, all the repair programs that regenerate our cells, repair broken proteins, kill the cancer cells. All of that stuff needs more melatonin. So winter is really a time to tend to that.
That's so helpful. And I guess the big question, that's maybe a silly question, is how does the cold help us? Does it help us maintain levels of vitamin D? Does it help us just what's the benefit of the cold really?
So cold improves electron flow. So
there we go.
Energy in the body comes down to electrons, right? Electrons and protons. It's that subatomic. It's not like I don't burn fat, right? I burn the electrons from the fat. I don't burn carbs. I burn the electrons from the carbs. So we burn electrons. And so cold will help with electron flow, which is going to be important. Cold also helps our mitochondria stay healthy. And so cold will, one way that mitochondria make ATP, and ATP is synonymous always with energy, but I like people to know that ATP is an energy source, maybe, but not the energy source. I think that there's a blend of energy sources that, nature, God has given us in our bodies, but ATP is important for several reasons that we don't have to go into. But in order to make ATP, we have to have our mitochondria the right size. If our mitochondria get swollen, they become energy inefficient. Just the same way that we're energy inefficient, an ankle that's sprained and swollen is energy inefficient. So cold helps our mitochondria maintain their exact right size. So again, they can hopefully pull electrons from body fat, because we're going through periods of food scarcity. They can pull electrons from body fat and they can make that into ATP, into water, and help us just thrive throughout these winter months. It's what all hibernating animals do. It really helps them restore their mitochondrial function.
Wow, that makes perfect sense. So you guys that are in the cold, rainy places, take advantage. Go outside. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's cold or rainy. Like your eyes the sunlight, the frequencies of sunlight that your brain needs at any given time it's there. It doesn't matter if it's cloudy, rainy, foggy, snowy, just go outside.
Yeah, I think that that's really helpful advice too, because I think people think, oh, it's rainy, it's dark outside, it's not even worth it, I should just stay in. But what you're saying is, doesn't matter the weather, just do it anyway. Like your eyes need that signal, right?
Yes, your eyes absolutely need that signal no matter what. And just because it doesn't necessarily, you look outside and it's gray, it's nasty, I don't want to go outside. Go outside and then see how your mood shifts. I guarantee you're going to pick up an energy, a hit, especially if it's morning light, a hit of dopamine and serotonin and all those chemicals in our brain that make us feel that much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And some other things that I was going to ask you about of just this winter environment is, what are your thoughts on like the grounding mats, the grounding sleeping mats for people who are like, it's snowing outside, I can't, because I do have some clients that they've already been on your channel because we talk about you in my membership group. And they're like, should we get the grounding mats? I'm like, let me talk to Carrie first, because they're like, it snows. They're up near Canada. It's snowing all the time. And I've gotten my people in my group addicted to walking outside barefoot now. And they're like, so should we look into these things, or what do you think about those?
There's two things. So I would say 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been like, oh, that technology is BS, right? But if anyone is curious, the book by Clint Ober, do I have it? It's called Earthing. I do really quick.
Oh yeah. I've got that. I have it too. Yes.
Oh, good. And so like this book is chock full of studies using not nature for grounding. There are some that use nature for grounding, but it also uses the grounding mat technology. And it shows such an improvement in inflammation and improvement, it like just as a general antioxidant capacity. So a healing thing for the body. And so in an ideal world, are we maybe wearing alpaca socks and leather only booties, and we're walking around in the snow and on the ice? Absolutely. Like that would be the coolest thing that you could do if that's something that you're interested in. But I think just from all that research that I've read and knowing what it feels like to be barefoot in the winter, because I do try to go outside occasionally barefoot in the winter, I just know it's not sustainable for doing it for extended periods of time. So that being said, then I would say, yes, a grounding mat could be a beneficial thing, especially if you're someone who's dealing with an inflammatory condition. You want to have that connection to the earth as much as possible. The alternative that I've also found for that is I have found a company called Harmony 783 that
I have some of their shoes. Yep.
the conductive carbon, right? And so like if you can wear a thicker like all natural fiber sock. So that would be an all wool sock or an all, alpaca sock. If you wear a natural fiber sock and then those grounding shoes, you'll be pulling the electrons through that conductive carbon and then into your body that way as well.
Awesome. Yeah. I bought some and I've been wearing them hiking. We have a nice little mountain around here that's a little bit more off the power grid. So my daughter and I hike it in the afternoons and the weekends. So I've been wearing the Harmony shoes, and I did buy a grounding mat, but then I talked with Corey and he's like, no, you don't do that. Just go outside. I'm like, well,
And that's, listen, I love Corey. Like Corey is, I feel like his brain is just
He's
amazing.
so brilliant. He's just so brilliant. I love him.
So brilliant. He's great. He is absolutely great. And I think actually we're probably going to do a live together tomorrow. I think that would be so much fun. But that being said, so I love it. And Corey is such a like he's by the gold standards. Like this is the way to do it, which is wonderful. I love that because people need to know what ideal is, like what they could kind of shoot for. I'm of the opinion that that's a beautiful thing to know, but like, what's my minimum effective dose as a full-time working mom with 3 kids and a house to keep quasi clean, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's where I start to kind of dive into some of these other things, like the grounding mat, like the sauna. I know he's not a fan of my sauna.
I didn't give up sauna after we talked. I'm still doing my sauna.
My brain, that just makes me feel so flipping good to be in that sauna. And I think it's that infrared in the middle of winter when I'm not going outside and getting that infrared hit from the sunlight. I have to have an alternative. And so if I was living in Scandinavia, they have they're
like sauna everywhere. Yeah.
Right. And so like, I can't give up. Sorry, Corey. I can't give up my sauna. But yeah, that's what I would do in the winter is like you do the best you can with grounding, but anything you can do to make that connection to the earth, you're better off than without it. And infrared sources, I think, are going to be a key thing too inside because we're lacking that in the winter.
Yeah, I love my EMR Tech panel. That's just, I'm obsessed with it.
Yes.
Because my body, and it's funny, I've tested my blood sugar before and after, and I actually see it go down by about 10 points before and after using the red light. So I'm like, this thing really works.
It absolutely does. So like when we're inflamed, like I'm not saying that you're inflamed, but what happens when the body has a little bit of inflammation is the mitochondria and maybe someone who's got a chronic infection or something, they've got an increase in the production of something, an enzyme called iNOS, which is inducible nitric oxide synthase. So it makes nitric oxide, and nitric oxide, it can be a friend or a foe, depending on where it's made. If it's made in an inflammatory sense like that, that nitric oxide will bind to part of our mitochondria that we need to make energy. It's called complex 4 of the mitochondrial electron transport chain. And when nitric oxide is bound to it, the electrons don't flow, right? We don't make that ATP. We don't make water too, which is what complex 4 does. And so that complex 4 needs 4 different frequencies of red, right? It needs a lot of red/infrared light frequencies in order to clear the nitric oxide. Literally those red light frequencies and infrared frequencies clear the nitric oxide out, and it allows then the electron flow to happen again. So you're able then to metabolize the glucose and the sugar out of your blood. You're able to get that process going again. Plus potentially that red light we know also helps to stimulate endothelial nitric oxide can be in a slightly different pattern, you could produce nitric oxide, which will help then pull the sugar out of your bloodstream from those little GLUT4 catcher's mitts that come to the surface of the muscle. So there's a lot of benefit to using a panel like that in terms of mitochondrial health, in terms of blood sugar regulation, in terms of inflammation. There's a whole host of benefits, and I've got a little panel, a little version, right? A little panel that I love to be around. And it really helps to support the collagen, right? That's really where all the quantum communication happens in the body. So you can get the collagen effect for, the anti-aging purposes, but you can also get that deep collagen effect and healing from those red light panels.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about the collagen a little bit more, but that's also when I have a cold vest. I'm still haven't gotten a plunge, but I have what's called a cool fat burner, which is, have you seen those?
Yeah. Before I went full plunge, I had one of those too. Yeah.
So that's where I'm at right now. I haven't got to full plunge yet. Cold showers and cool fat burner. But my blood glucose will go down 20 points whenever I wear that thing for an hour. It's crazy. So that your explanation with the electrons, I mean, that just makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Which is why everyone complains about holiday weight gain, in the winter. And I think that is not inevitable. Like, no, there are so many things we can do to modify our environment so that if we do go to a holiday party and we overindulge here and there, that's not the end of the world. Like our body can mitigate that, but it's when we have a disconnected internal environment and we then also throw things like sugar cookies and whatever stuffing and stuff all at it, that's when it becomes the problem. But maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but you can get away with a heck of a lot more holiday stuff when you have your light environment and your cold environment correct.
Yeah, I agree. I've been experimenting a little bit with just one day a week, making sure I come out of ketosis. That's something that Dr. Hunt has had me do because I'm working with her. And I was freaked out and terrified that it was going to just make me gain a bunch of weight and make my blood sugar a disaster. And since I'm doing everything with light, it's fine. My blood sugars the next day are in the 70s. I have lost a bunch of weight. Like, it's not what I thought it was going to be at all. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's freeing actually, right? To be able to not have to count every single calorie or carb or protein, whatever it's so freeing to understand that food matters, but if there's a lot more wiggle room when you got the rest of these parameters in place.
Yeah. And if the direct messages I get on Instagram, and even some people will find my email and email me, and it's like this long drawn out thing about calories and fat and protein. And am I eating too much protein? Am I not eating enough fat? And like, and it's these long, like, oh, wow, that's so exhausting, you guys.
So exhausting, right? Like, let's step away from that because honestly, I don't know when the last time I counted something was, right? I hate to, but I was first a calorie counter, eating every 3 hours to keep, this is like 10 years ago, I'm eating every 3 hours to keep my metabolism up.
Oh God, don't even get me started with that nonsense. There's a whole movement now all about this, the pro-metabolic movement.
I can't even go there. If it's diet dominant, I don't go there anymore. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. I'm over it. I'm so over it.
Right.
So no calorie count. You don't have to calorie count, or if you want to for a little bit just to see where you are, cool. Yeah. But that shouldn't be your main strategy. That's my problem, is that it's the main strategy is the protein and fat and and people are just like, why isn't this working? I'm like, well, you're scrolling on your phone at 11 o'clock at night in your bed, shining blue light in your face and surrounded by Wi-Fi, and you never go outside. And when was the last time you saw a sunrise? Like, yeah, let's talk about that.
When I tell clients that blue light it's like a little hit of blood sugar. Every time you stare at that blue lit screen, TV, phone, you're under a bright bulb. You're literally, it's like your body thinks you're eating a cookie, right? You're literally getting this thing called gluconeogenesis. You're getting a little flood of blood sugar every single time. So you could literally be sitting there eating as clean as possible, but you're going to store that extra sugar in your blood from your bloodstream as body fat. It just is what it is. And all it has to do is you're in the wrong light environment. So makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean, I go to, meetings and I have to sit in this room under fluorescent lights. And so anytime I'm in there, I've got my sweater and my yellow lenses. I know. I'm like I'm literally like scarves and like sweaters and yellow lenses for the 1 hour that I have to sit in there.
Yep.
And everyone's like, what in the hell? And as soon as I get outside the building to like talk to people, I'm like, it's all coming off, and the glasses are, I'm like in my tank top, and they're like,
that's exactly it. Yeah. Like when same thing, like when I go into the grocery store, because of all the garbage lighting, it's like, okay, my hat on, I got everything. It's like, it's middle of the winter, right? And so I like make sure my coat's all up. But then when I get out, it's like, okay, I got to take my coat off as I'm walking to the car, right? So I can,
to get the cold.
People look at me like I'm not weird. I swear.
I think we need to start these types of trends rather than people freaking out about their protein and fat macros. Honestly, like that's kind of where I'm just hitting my head against the wall with the people that follow me. And I want to be helpful. That's what I've wanted to do since day one of this, is just give them helpful information. So hopefully we can start some new trends.
You're the perfect thing, right? I mean, even carnivore yogi, right? Like carnivore, right? So like you identified originally with a specific way of eating, which a lot of us do, but you've evolved. And so I think what we have to encourage people to do is unlearn and then relearn. It's what you and I are doing all the time. It's like, well, I thought that exercise was the end all be all. Well, no, now it's food. Well, no, now it's light. And could there be something that even trumps light?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have to keep my mind open to it and then just experiment and explore these new avenues. The second you shut your brain off from the potential of something being positive in your life, you're never going to succeed, right? The second you
Yeah.
shut that door. So you always have to be open to the idea of, could this idea be viable? Could it work for me? How can I research this deeper? How can I apply it? And then you can start to pass judgment on it. But until then, just keep an open mind.
I agree 100%, 100%. Well, can we touch on collagen really quickly?
Sure.
Because this is, yeah, a lot of people are always adding the collagen supplements, but I don't really think that they understand the mechanism. And you have a really brilliant way of explaining it.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love this, right? So a lot of people will try bone broth or
Hmm.
like a collagen loading. Dr. Axe is big on like this collagen loading. So like 30 days of extra collagen, extra sources of these collagen rich amino acids, or these amino acids that make up collagen. So to start off with, I think we need to recognize that literally collagen is everywhere. It's the
Mm.
main source of protein that makes up our bodies. It's from the skin to the connective tissue to the bone to the little connections between the cells called the extracellular matrix to the inside of the cells called the cytoskeleton to the inside of the nucleus called the nuclear matrix. It's all made up of collagen. And it's made me really frustrated because each of these little collagen, they almost look like spider webs or like intersecting highways. It's like this what we thought was a support structure for the body, we find out has some pretty amazing quantum properties. And it
Mm.
makes me mad because when it's along the side of my thigh, it's called my connective tissue IT band. And when it's
Right.
between my cells, it's called my extracellular matrix. And, it's my cytoskeleton. It's all the same thing, except
Mm.
at different scales. So picture big bands of fascia, right, that you might be able to pinch, where your elbow, where your tricep meets your elbow, you can feel maybe those lines of fascia, those tendons, but it's all the same thing. And nature chose this collagen for an amazing reason, and it's because collagen forms a triple helix. It actually can self-assemble itself into this spiral-like staircase. And so picture like this folded collagen, these spirals of collagen all throughout your body. Yes, they help transfer force. They provide something called tensegrity. So they help me adjust my body and how my body is supported no matter where I'm at in space. But what we now know is that the way that collagen folds, it actually allows for the conduction of so much electricity and quantum information to flow.
Mm.
When I move my body, my collagen helps me generate electricity. It's called piezoelectricity. So I can literally funnel electricity through my whole entire, I call it the living matrix, or I call it
Mm.
my connective tissue superhighway, right? It's like this quantum superhighway throughout my body. So electricity is moving throughout my collagen to tell my body where I'm at in space and then tell my cells what to do because of that. That the way that it twists, it kind of twists the water. It forms exclusion zone water. So that exclusion zone water funnels negative charge. It funnels electrons all throughout it. It has that proton zone too, because it has an exclusion zone, it's going to have a proton zone. So it funnels protons everywhere. And then inside is like this empty channel that is synonymous with like the meridians. And that's where you can also funnel photons of light. So
Mm.
this collagen is so much more than just, does it generate wrinkles? Does it cause my knees to be achy because my collagen is degrading? It actually is a main way that on the quantum scale, my body captures energy and then ferries it everywhere. And if there's a break in the communication, if communication is lost, let's say to my shoulder, because I've got a scar right here from a previous surgery, if communication is lost here, then that scar is going to block both the flow of electrons, the flow of protons, the flow of photons, which is synonymous with a loss of information and potentially a loss of energy to that tissue. So my big take on all of this is that if our collagen is as healthy as can be, we're disseminating all of this quantum information that we pull in from the field and we also generate inside of our bodies. And we're allowing it to go where it needs to go so that we can just have optimum, coordinated, coherent function all the time.
Mm.
Is that too much?
No, I love it. I love it.
Okay.
I love it because we look at it as something so simple, and it's, just understanding that the body is electric,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people even understand that concept. And we've talked about that with the electrons today and getting the charge from the earth. And it's like how the body communicates, like at the speed of light. We are just really taught this incorrect model of how the body works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if people, even if they didn't quite understand that, which, I loved it because I've been listening to all of your podcasts. So if anyone listened to that and you were like, huh, go to Carrie's podcast, go to her page, listen to this stuff and really learn it, really understand how your body works, because I think that's where we start to make this paradigm shift of why it makes sense that we're doing these things and, how we get the water in our body to actually work for us and not expose ourselves to all these things that are going to dehydrate us and, stop that flow of energy in the body. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So then like, if we understand the body as being electric and it relies on these collagen channels, if you will, then I go to anything that impairs the collagen has the potential to damage the communication in the body, and damaged communication is synonymous with chaos. As soon as a cell feels chaotic, it starts to generate more inflammation, and that starts to inflame the tissue, and then the tissue becomes diseased, and that eventually becomes potentially a diagnosed condition.
Yes.
And I want to help people before it gets there. And so taking care, it sounds so kind of lame, but taking care of the collagen network, I think is another level of just taking care of our electrical bodies.
Yeah, I agree. And so what's your biggest tip for someone who wants to take care of the collagen in their bodies?
Oh God. Well, okay. I think something that's really fascinating that I've found help with is breaking down scar tissue, because collagen is supposed to twist and line up in more of a longitudinal way, like along the long axis of the body. And scar tissue kind of goes horizontal, crisscrossy. It's a misfolded collagen. And so I've seen a lot of people actually get weird benefits from breaking up scar tissue, whether it's massage or whether it's using the red light therapy devices or sauna. Those are great ways to remodel the scar tissue and really have a good impact on the collagen. So I would say tending to scars. I've literally seen people who've had C-section scars go away, and then their migraines go away. So it's
wow.
It's such a wild thing to think about. But they're called, if you want to look up, if you want to look into this more, it's considered in German bioregulatory medicine. They're called interference fields, because it's blocking, it's creating an interference of energy flow that scar is. So tending to scars would be number one. Number two, then making sure that you're giving your body all the building blocks of the collagen that it needs. And one of the main amino acids in collagen, 30% of the collagen is made up of glycine, a specific amino acid. Unfortunately, these days, there's a chemical that's pervasive in our world called glyphosate.
Yeah.
Which Roundup, right? So step 2, don't use Roundup in your yard ever.
No.
But that Roundup, that glyphosate, the GLY in glyphosate stands for glycine, essentially. And so glyphosate can replace glycine in our collagen, which causes it to misfold. And anytime that collagen, again, can't form those beautiful twists, we lose communication through that area. And so glycine loading, or just doing higher doses of glycine, I am playing around with and I'm finding benefit to. It's supporting the whole collagen network, because then as you go through a little bit of autophagy, or you help the body break down broken collagen with something called serapeptase, which I can go into, you allow the body then to replace the glyphosate with the glycine so that the folding can take place. And so then that serapeptase, it's a proteolytic enzyme. Have you heard of proteolytic enzymes?
I have, yes.
So I love these, right? Because our body produces enzymes all the time to break stuff up. And this specific enzyme, it can be used to digest our food, right? We make enzymes to digest our food, but you can also take these proteolytic enzymes on an empty stomach. And the one that I love is called serapeptase. And what it does is it seeks out, it's an enzyme that seeks out dysfunctional connective tissue, and it breaks it down. So again, to help dissolve scars and what people report, it's fascinating. What people report when they take these things is they report a big time improvement in any inflammatory conditions. And like I was saying, right? Like if there's chaos in an area because information's not flowing, it's because that there's the quantum flow, that energy flow isn't going there. And so we break down that scar tissue, we remodel the collagen, and we allow information to go where it needs to go so that our body can heal itself.
Interesting. I'm going to have to check my enzymes to see if they have, because I use digestive enzymes systematically, like before bed or first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. And I'm obsessed with my enzymes. So I'm going to have to go check those out. I just interviewed the owner of the company that I use, Steve Wright. It's Healthy Gut is his company. Cool. And I love those enzymes. So that's even more motivation to keep doing that. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm a big enzyme fan too. I think also we have in this area, we've got fluoride in our water. And so
I was going to ask you about that next. I was actually going to ask what the perfect glass of water looks like.
It doesn't have fluoride in it. Fluoride, what I found, like I'm not worried necessarily about destruction of the pineal gland or things like that. I haven't looked into that, frankly. I don't know if that happens or not, but I do believe that, or I know that fluoridated water, fluoride increases the production of an enzyme that breaks down good collagen. So, you know, picture just being in thinking we're doing well for ourselves and we're eating big salads. Unfortunately, those vegetables have been sprayed full of glyphosate.
Yeah.
And drinking tons of water, you know, right out of my tap, right? Or even filtered through a Brita. It's not going to filter the fluoride out. And so I'm thinking I'm doing such good things for my body. And at that quantum communication scale, I'm creating a lot of damage and I'm wreaking a lot of havoc. And so that's where people can only get so far with some of these strategies, is because they're not looking at the right scale. You got to really understand what's happening at that tiny quantum scale, I believe, to really see health from a bigger perspective.
Yeah, I've just started studying water. I'm trying to get Robert Slovak on my podcast. I'm obsessed with him.
He's great. I love him. I love him because I'm not going to go into it, but I do have my own take on deuterium depletion because
I was going to ask you about it.
Exclusion zone. I am a firm believer that the exclusion zone sequesters deuterium for us.
Yes.
Right. And so if we create more exclusion zone water, we help to deplete the deuterium.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that there's a big connection there, which is interesting, but I also love listening to Robert because I do use the Quinton minerals.
Me too. And
so I think that minerals are another way that our body stays hydrated. We need appropriate minerals. And if, for those who are not familiar, those are just a beautiful blend of basically saltwater minerals, sea salt or saltwater minerals, ocean minerals, that I've been doing for a couple of years now. And I won't give that up.
I won't either. I love my Quinton, and I also use the hydrogen tabs. So I love those too.
Yes, I do molecular hydrogen as well. Yeah.
Yep.
That just seems to be like a really amazing selective antioxidant that has so many benefits overall. So
yeah, it's awesome.
I know. And I'm really not a big supplement person.
Yeah.
Which is weird too. Like I don't take a ton of supplements, but there's like a couple of key ones. You hit the nail on all of those. Yeah. And I feel like those have benefit for sure.
Yeah, I have gotten rid of most of my supplements, to be honest with you, but there's a few that I will not give up. My Quinton, hydrogen tabs, my digestive enzymes, I'm not getting rid of those. Yep. And I do a little antioxidant supplementation sometimes, but I mean, I don't really feel the need to take, and now I'm going to take glycine after talking to you. I have some.
Take glycine. Like I tell people with that, just try to do a month of extra. Right. Yeah. So really overload, or, you know, carnivore stuff, people aren't necessarily paying attention to the blend of amino acids. It's not necessarily about the protein. Well, such great research is showing that when you go to less muscle meats, more collagenous meats, and you get more glycine, there's an improvement in the lifespan of the animals that have been studied, and the inflammatory levels in the animals that have been studied. So where you get your amino acids from does matter. And so why not, replace some of those muscle meats with some collagen or some of that glycine.
Oh yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, one more question. I did want to know your thoughts on deuterium depleted water, if you want to tell me.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I do think that deuterium can play an issue in health, right? It can. Yeah. What I know about hydrogen is that hydrogen needs to be in its purest, lightest isotope, just the H, right? You can't have that. You have just the proton. You can't have the neutron with it. That will impact mitochondrial function. So we know mitochondria, you need to have that light hydrogen, that regular hydrogen, in order to make the ATP. They also need it then, I think, to make the water, right? So when the electron chain is flowing appropriately, we're making deuterium depleted water inside of our cells.
Yes.
I think that I don't think nature God would be stupid to like really spend so much time depleting the deuterium rich hydrogens from the Krebs cycle and the NADPH. Yeah. I don't think we would waste all that time if making deuterium depleted water wasn't an important thing. So I think that it's important. Mitochondrial health, I think, is synonymous with deuterium depleted water. I also feel that the proton flow that happens in that proton zone, I feel like we do want that to be as deuterium depleted as possible as well. So I think that's why the exclusion zone holds on to the heavier hydrogen, because it can be kind of in this stable crystalline structure, not necessarily needed to move. Anytime you want protons to move, such as through that fifth step, that ATPase in the mitochondria, you need to make sure that they're as light as possible. And so when protons do their quantum, it's called jump conduction, you want them to be as light as possible. So I think that's really important. So do I think that deuterium plays a role? Absolutely, I do. I also found it fascinating when I was doing a little bit of research that inflammation, breaking down there's an inflammatory pathway called the arachidonic acid pathway, and it actually helps to produce deuterium depleted water. So is inflammation just another way that the body is trying to make deuterium depleted water inside of us? Maybe, right? Maybe. And then also that nitric oxide, every time nitric oxide is made in a beneficial way, you make 2 molecules of deuterium depleted water. So like their body has so many pathways in which it wants to make
deplete it. Yeah.
To deplete the deuterium, or to make the deuterium depleted water.
Yes.
And so I think it's important. And I do feel that it's expensive to drink, right? The deuterium depleted water. So I think people need to first maximize all of these other strategies that they have, unless they're dealing with some major inflammatory condition. You're right. A cancer diagnosis, a severe autoimmune condition, anything along those lines, then I would say it would not, I think it would only be beneficial to do a month's worth of deuterium depletion. In conjunction with all these other things too.
Yes, not just alone,
right? Because then I'd love to see research showing all of these things, because think about it. We also get rid of deuterium in secretions. So let's throw in that infrared sauna so that we can sweat out the extra stuff, right? Let's do these other things, like, let's make sure we're pushing enough a good quality deuterium depleted fluid so we can urinate out, and the saliva, we can get all of it out of our bodies. So I think that because we have so many pathways in which we either deplete or sequester deuterium or make deuterium depleted water inside of us, that it does play an important role. And so it's something that could be a potentially really beneficial health investment for someone who's really going through some sort of a challenging health condition.
Awesome. Well, that's very, very helpful. I have experts on that, have companies associated with that. And so I think people get really skeptical. Yeah. But the reason why I even started looking into deuterium depleted water was because of the conversation I had with Dr. Cruz. And he said, if you're living in a high EMF environment, like Atlanta, where I live, then you might want to look into some deuterium depleted water. And so after that conversation, that's why I started drinking it. And I've been doing it for a couple months now. And I'm going to make a full video on it soon, but it's been pretty dramatic as far as my uptick in energy and just sleep and everything. It's been pretty interesting. But
and you're doing it in conjunction with all these other strategies too. So that's really cool to kind of see how it compounds when you do it with like that comprehensive plan.
Oh yeah, I've got sauna, I've got my red light panel, I'm doing outdoor time. Yep. I'm just putting it all, throwing all there. So
that's great. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yes. Awesome. Well, Carrie, if people want to find you, and I'll make sure I put all your information below and in the show notes, what's the easiest way to find you?
The easiest way to find me is to get a hold of me on Instagram, right? So DM me, Carrie B Wellness on Instagram. You can also, like I think you alluded to, I've got a podcast that is both as a YouTube channel, Carrie B Wellness, and on Spotify and a lot of those other podcast stations. It's 2% Better Health. podcast. So yeah, I think those are probably the best ways to kind of wrap your brain around the information that I share. And if you find anything interesting or if you have any questions, I'd love them.
Awesome. And yeah, if you guys have questions, reach out to Carrie, me. Maybe we'll do another conversation, maybe an Instagram live in the future. So thank you guys for listening. And thank you, Carrie, for being here today.
Thank you, Sarah.
Awesome.